that's just a projector that doesn't work. I guess everybody knows that. They just unlock the door. So we're going to go sort of old school. We have our laptops. We'll just sort of be reading, just talking about some things. I do have some handouts that essentially replicate a lot of things I was going to talk about. I'm Barry Brinton. I'm with the Center for Civic Engagement and part of our Bringing 2 Degrees initiative around climate change. So I'm actually going to hand these out if people are interested in what's going on coming up in the future. We're going to have roughly monthly themes. This theme of this month is around food. And I want to tell folks that if you're not familiar, today is actually October 16th, which is World Food Day. That's when the UN was Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, was formed in 1945. We really look at this day to reflect on and sort of advocate on issues of food security, increase food production. This is the old school way to show things I got. You can click on there and see what's going on. Now we're sort of tying all these together. So part of this initiative is asking the basic question, what will Binghamton look like under 2 degrees of warming? What can we do now to prepare? So the theme of this month on food is talking around the impacts on food systems. In particular, we're going to talk about tonight this nexus of food security, food waste, and climate change. How this all link to each other. So front back, some information. Handing stuff out on front back. If you're not familiar with the Broome County Food Council's Community Resource Map and Emergency Food Access Map, you can access it here. You go online as well. There's all the information around that. As well. Copies and share this with you as well. I guess we're even pre-overhead projector, right? Doesn't have one of those here, but that would be good. All right. So our panel this evening is just sort of help facilitate some conversations. Myself, give some engagement in diversity. We have Aiden Kowalski, who's our undergraduate research assistant in our food justice working group. He's been working with us a lot, a group of us looking at comparative food plans, county food plans. To sort of jump ahead, Broome County Food Council is looking and developing over this next year a food plan, an action plan about access, which is including a component of climate change. Aiden's been looking at some comparative food plans across the country in similar kind of communities like Binghamton, similar histories, similar sort of post-industrial challenges in terms of the numbers of health disparities, food insecurity, etc. Looking at some models of that. And then we have Jamie Kirby from Vines. Now, I'll point out they've got the table set up back. Lots of information about Vines and Jamie, what we talked about for the data. So what I want to do is just sort of go through and start out with Binghamton 2 Degrees. Again, it's this initiative involving community conversations from the university and our community and our partners, and sort of looking at that question, not only is referred to as Binghamton, but it's really about Broome County, it's about the southern tier, it's about, generally speaking, the impact of climate change, how we're going to prepare for that. How we build, for example, resilient food systems, or a resilient food system that deals with aspects of food insecurity and food waste and the nexus all linked to issues of climate change. So I always like to begin by thinking of this as the context for the right to food, ultimately is what we're talking about, a basic fundamental human right. Everyone has a right to safe, nutritious food to lead healthy and active lives. That's from the UN Right to Food Unit. It's pretty much that basic, I think, drives a lot of our interest and sort of passion behind food security issues and food systems that are fair and equitable, a social justice issue. We know that for the UN Sustainable Development Goals, number 2 is zero hunger, but the other 16 in addition to that all come back to issues that closely link to each other, whether it's questions having to do with clean energy or economic growth or gender equality, education, poverty reduction, etc., clean water and onward. And so, the right to food, I like to sort of frame as, think about food security. It needs to be available, accessible, it needs to be adequate, and culturally acceptable as well. It needs to be appropriate in the cultural context in which it is being received as food security aid. So right now we're looking at about 820 million people that are hungry, food insecure on a global scale. That's a 20% increase since 2019. None of us are surprised. Clearly the pandemic globally has impacted not only supply chain, but has increased food insecurity as well throughout the globe. And no trend of that tailoring off much either. Pretty much an upward trajectory. We'll probably hit 1 billion, I would imagine, in the next few years. We've been there before, 1 billion, and I think we're heading back up to that number. So a global challenge. But overall, when we think about food insecurity, what comes to mind is the lack of consistent access to enough food for household members to have an active, healthy life. It's that simple. Or limited or uncertain availability of even nutritionally adequate foods, getting to the nutrition side of this. So right now in the United States, with about 1 in 8 Americans are food insecure, and also that translates to about 1 out of 6 children in the U.S. But we also know food security, broadly speaking, isn't just about food. It's linked to, and we know very much in this region, Southern Tier, Broome County, City of Binghamton, affordable housing, health problems, social isolation, low wages, medical care costs. That's just the beginning of the number of things that work together to impact or overlapping challenges that force families to make trade-offs between housing, medical bills, nutritionally adequate food, etc. And so we all know challenges, even in our community around us, that face decisions about paying the heat bill, the rent, or going without eating. Obviously, you don't want to be evicted. You don't want to have your children removed from the house that's too cold by social services. So what are you left with? And fortunately, we do have an amazing, in this Southern Tier region, between the Food Bank Southern Tier, Chow, and all of our local food meal sites, our food pantries. You did not get one of those, both in terms of great food access map updating the County Food Council, but please share that in your neighborhood and your community so people know kind of where those are located all throughout Broome County. I did want to sort of compare, Broome County in the context of these numbers of hunger. So we're looking at a food insecure rate about 12%. So basically, if you're looking at food insecurity in Broome County in comparison to the U.S. average, where we may have close to, let's say, 1 in 10 Americans, we're looking at 1 in 8 from Broome County. So it is a challenge in this area in terms of food insecurity. Food insecure children is about 1 out of 6 nationally, but also in this area as well. And as we very much know, that varies from urban to rural to neighborhood, such as sort of broadly speaking about the county well. So I did provide the handout, and it just sort of provides not only kind of the context of food waste, about 40% of all foods wasted through the whole process, through production. Numbers vary, but about 43% of food waste just in households alone, within the broader context of food waste. So you can look at that in terms of money, you can look at it in terms of poundage, but the other factor you can look at that in terms of how that food waste getting to the point of this nexus is also tied to climate change, in terms of where that food waste goes, or the energy it takes to produce food that ultimately is not utilized as well. So I always like to say there's more to food waste than just wasted food. So when you look at that, sort of, you can see this, but I'll just read you this bottle of ingredients here. It's a great bottle. I love this graphic, but the ingredients of food waste are land, water, energy, soil, seeds, blood, sweat, and tears, fertilizer, deforestation, transportation, compost, food miles, methane, biodiversity loss, oil, refrigeration, early mornings, packaging, erosion, time, fuel waste, CO2 emissions, inequality, pollution, hunger, climate change. Just the beginning. And those things are clearly what we want us to think about and sort of this nexus of this relationship. And so there's lots of ways we could think of food waste and climate change and what we can do about it. That's part of the sort of conversation we want to be having with the community is what are the next steps, and make sure no one leaves without thinking about basic fundamental next steps that can possibly be taken. There's a lot of ways to summarize that. One of the shorter versions is to save it, share it, and compost it. So the reuse, recycle, those kind of frames as well. I want to simplify that, but all said and done, I mean, we need to think about the amount of food that's being diverted to waste that could be going to feeding food insecure families, the food that's not being composted but going into landfills that ultimately do create CO2 and ultimately methane. Methane's about a 25 times more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. So you think about that impact is quite dramatic. And also, and we know in this area, and people can probably speak to that that are here tonight, we have a conversation, is this I think we have a rather robust and hopefully continue to grow food recovery network, I think, throughout the county and throughout the region. So there's a lot of good things going on, both in terms of amazing organizations that are answering this civic challenge to food insecurity in our region, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, but also dealing with sort of reducing that food waste. I mean, a number of years ago, Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, came with sort of what we call an inverse, and that's one of the things we had, an inverse pyramid. And so first of all, just reduce the volume of surplus food generated. And part of that, as you probably know, is everyone wants their fresh fruits and vegetables at any store you go to look nice and fresh. And what they do is they just roll them right through to make sure you always have something that looks good and shiny and fresh. But the reality of that food is it's still food, and even if it's ugly food or whatever, it still has great value to it. And I know there are various, I don't know the actual institutional sizes, but larger institutions are required to compost, or at least show a pathway to compost if they have a lot of excess food that's out there. Smaller, like restaurants and things, really not, but are encouraged to compost rather than send it to the landfill. But part of that relationship is for the food recovery hierarchy, is feeding hungry people. Donate extra food, food banks, soup kitchens, shelters, etc. Feed animals, for food scraps to animal feed, industrial uses that are possible there, composting, and the very bottom of the pyramid, of course, least preferred, is to clearly dispose of it in a landfill. So we have the EPA short versions: get less food, buy only what you need, use what you have as well, feed hungry people, donate, and then compost. I know those are simple messages, but it's really sort of taking a very conscious effort to think about our food system. So just begin to wrap things up, kind of this relationship to food waste and climate change. If we think about when food waste breaks down, the landfills, it's methane gas, we're talking very potent CO2 linked, and as one of the greenhouse gases as well as methane, as we know, to the global warming we're seeing. Just the energy waste. Think of the amount of energy along the food supply chain. And its preparation, it's just a massive amount of energy that goes into the entire food system for naught, really. And all that energy has to come from something and has an impact environment too. And also, if you even think about 25% of fresh water consumption, and pollution in the U.S. every year comes from food waste, consuming so much water. And for those of you who clearly maybe follows a lot more, we won't even talk about the amount of water that goes into your hamburger and raising meat, so that's another conversation. But I did want to wrap things up before I turn it over to Aid and talk a little bit about food plans, sort of introduce particularly the Broome County Food Council. It's been established and sort of moving along with its own mission and really envisioning an equitable food system that provides healthy, affordable, and accessible food sources for all community members of the county. At present, the council has over 170 members, 68 agencies or organizations represented, we have a steering committee, working groups, and the long-term goal, beginning particularly in January moving forward, is to develop ultimately a plan for Broome County around food access, which would include everything around how to deal with food waste, how to deal with issues of climate change, building resilience around the food system and production, etc. So it's not just a matter of emergency food systems, but thinking in the long term, what kind of plan can help you be there. So I come back to one of the things that Broome County Food Council put out this last summer, and is available in those cards I handed out as well, is both this emergency food access map and the community resource map as well. Because as we talked about earlier, it's not just about food access, it's about all the other resources that complement people's food insecurity. So with that, and we'll open up for conversation in a bit after we get through our panel, but I want to throw over to Aiden, kind of set this up in terms of, well, what is the food plan? What drives food plans? And talk again about this nexus in the context of what we can be looking for, and again, as a community, really sort of contributing ideas and thoughts and perspectives on developing a food access plan for the entire region that really is focused on Broome County. So Aiden, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my name's Aiden Majewski. So I'm going to kind of start just briefly going over kind of our food system as it is today. So our food system is not like a linear model, but it's a very complex system that involves several subsystems like the consumption of food, processing, distribution, to just name a few. And so these kind of come together to create a web of interconnected activities and actors and policies and cultural norms. But as the status quo kind of changes within our food system due to climate change and kind of dynamic and unpredictable economic and environmental forces, it requires change. And so food councils have emerged as one potential grassroots solution to some of these issues. So first, some of you might be asking, well, what even is a food council? So a food council is a community-based organization that's made up of individuals that are in other organizations that kind of come together within the food and food-adjacent spheres and work towards a common goal of creating a more resilient food system. So food councils kind of have these four primary functions of gathering information, so looking at the current food system, seeing what are some strengths and then what are some challenges, connecting people, so bringing different relevant actors and stakeholders within the community together to have conversations around food, educating everyone, so doing outreach, so things like the emergency food access map, so community resources, and then recommending changes based on the information that they gather. And so there's a big variety in kind of the work that food councils do, where some are more spaces for discussion around food policy, and then others have more ambitious plans on developing food plans. And so that's kind of what those councils are we're going to focus on tonight. So those food councils create these food plans, which are very comprehensive documents that kind of start with an initial assessment of the current food landscape, and then based on those results, so looking at the strengths and challenges that exist, then proposing goals and recommendations on how to make sure that those strengths remain going into the future, and then address some of the challenges that exist today. And so the work of food plans is very different. There's varying different methods for collecting initial data on the food system, and then there's very different steps on how to achieve goals. But a lot of their work kind of falls in five main categories, being hunger reduction, food waste reduction, localizing food systems, health, and small farm viability. So, and climate change kind of overlaps and intersects over all of these five categories. So for example, in one food plan, they mentioned that localizing food systems would have a positive effect and reduce carbon footprint, because instead of food coming from hundreds of miles away, the distance it has to travel is much smaller. From a small farm viability perspective, that instead of an almost complete reliance on kind of large industrial scale farming that's very resource intense, having kind of a hybrid model with a mix of both small and larger farms, again, to reduce carbon footprint. And then from a food waste perspective, some proposals have food recovery programs or composting requirements for businesses within a specific area to try and divert as much food waste from going to landfills as possible. And so why bring forward? We in Broome County have our own food council, and they, at the beginning of next year, are going to start working on creating their own food plan. So as they're kind of in the process of molding and crafting their plan, something that I want all of you to kind of think about is, what do you think is important to be included in a food plan here, and why is that something you think is important for our community? So, thank you.
Right, so that'll be a point of conversation we'll have coming up here. I just want to mention also that the Broome County Food Council did put out a survey last summer, about 1,300 responses, and that part of that survey, those results will be in informing part of this food plan, but most importantly, it will be the input of the community as well. And so for community partners and organizations already doing types of work at this Nexus, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Kirby from Vines and let him sort of take over and talk a little about what his organization has been doing in this area.
Hi everybody, I'm Jamie Kirby. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator with Vines. We have been an organization here in Binghamton, born and raised in Binghamton, since 2007. Our slogan is growing food, growing community, because we understand that food security is a huge issue here in this area, but you cannot grow food and feed people without also connecting with the community. As you mentioned earlier, it's all interconnected. So essentially, we try our best to get fresh food directly to people. We do that in a number of ways, through a number of programs. We run the Binghamton Urban Farm, where we have 2¼ acres where we grow food right here in the city, just a few blocks from where we're sitting right now. We also manage and grow food at a site that Chow owns out in Conklin. Unfortunately, both of these sites are in floodplains, so we will probably have our own issues to deal with very soon when we talk about 2 degrees warmer. In addition to the farms, or in connection with the farms, we run a farm share program, which is essentially a CSA, or community supported agriculture. So it's like a subscription plan. People sign up for, and each week they get fresh food either from our farm or one of our 2 partner farms, which are within the local area as well. In addition to that, we have 22 community gardens around the Triple Cities area. Essentially, our goal is to have everyone who lives within the, potentially Broome County, to be able to have a short walk to a place where they themselves can grow fresh food. In addition to that, we have a program called Build a Garden, where we actually go to people's homes. If they qualify, essentially people sign up or attempt to sign up for this program. We go to their homes if they qualify, and depending on the season, we bring them containers to grow from, so that way, even if they're living in a small apartment with only a patio or a balcony or a small backyard, the hope is that they can still grow food there. We provide everything. We provide the grow bags, the soil, the seeds, seedlings, information. And then another program of ours, the Green Thumb Workshop Series, throughout the year, we are out there teaching workshops that range anywhere from growing food and identifying plants all the way through to what do I do once I've harvested it. So we do cooking and canning and other preserving techniques as well throughout the year. Sorry, the Build a Garden program also in the fall, so in the spring is when we do the grow bags. In the autumn, we actually go to people's homes. So if they have the space, we build raised beds. Again, we provide everything. We build the beds, we fill them with soil, we provide seeds, seedlings, so on and so forth down the line. The reason why we use raised beds, both in that program and in the majority of our community This year we have been offering a soil testing program. And so not only are we testing the soil in our community gardens, but we're also testing soil at people's homes. Obviously, people don't need us for that necessarily. They can go directly to universities that test soil and get the samples themselves. But we're trying to provide access, essentially. We also employ several, this year it's up to 25 Binghamton youth between the ages of 14 and 21 every year, 6 weeks during the summer. And then once youth go through the summer program, they're eligible to return and work with us in the spring and the autumn as well, in smaller cohorts. So again, it's not just about growing food and providing food or providing access to food, but it's also about building community and providing other opportunities. Because whenever the youth are here working with us, they're not only getting paid and learning about agriculture, but we're also giving them workshops on financial resiliency, college preparedness, that sort of thing. So we like to think that we're helping to build the next generation who can go out and provide for their own in many ways, most specifically with regard to fresh food. So that's mostly what we do. We do quite a few things, but that's mostly what we do. But within all of this, it's extraordinarily important for us to remember that it is all about community. So partnerships within the community, as well as engaging the communities, especially the communities like the north side and the east side that have less access to fresh food. There's quite a bit of food apartheid going on in those neighborhoods. And there's still a lot of work to be done, as with around a lot of Broome County. But it's good to be doing the work. We like to think that we're making a difference. We hope that we're making a difference.
Thanks, Gene. Yeah. I was going to add, just hearing you speak, is sort of this broader frame of social justice. And really, I've always seen food security as an environmental justice question, and the bigger framework of all this does tie back to that, particularly for looking at this Nexus and the impact and differential impact on communities. So I'd like to sort of open up for comments and questions. I'm not going to call anybody out, but I know we have some people that are very familiar with our food system, active in our food system, in their organization, right here with us tonight. So, I don't plan on answering all the questions, but anybody up here. But also, I know we have people in the audience, both who have incredible insights, but also all of you from the community. Just want to hear your thoughts, your perspectives, or questions that you might have as well. Just generally about our food system in Binghamton and sort of concerns or obviously optimism you may even have about how we challenge this nexus of food security, food waste, and climate change.
So I didn't realize you were up to 22 community gardens.
We are, yes.
That's amazing. Are there areas in this Tri-Cities area where you are still looking to add community gardens? Like, do you have a map that says these are our community garden deserts?
Yes and no.
Okay.
There's not like the murder map, with all the string drawn. we don't have that, so to speak. But yes, we were hopeful that we were building number 23 this year. We have a site for it already. It's actually in Johnson City, and hopefully that will get accomplished next year. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to be done this year for various reasons. But yes, our goal is essentially one per year, realistically. I'll be honest and say it was probably a little bit of building our own construction site, our own office building this year that slowed us down a little bit. That's not actually what slowed down this particular garden, but it has
wondering if, you know, if we could get a map of the places where, where the 22 gardens are, put a little circles around them and find the areas that are missing.
Yes.
And then maybe, I'm trying to think of like, as a community, because I'm also part of the Getting to 2 Degrees initiative. Trying to think of action items, can we get that out into the community that we are actively looking for places in these areas?
Absolutely. So our map is available on our website for where our current gardens are. It doesn't have proposed sites on it, but it does have the current gardens. I actually meant to bring our placard this evening, which also has it on it, to give more precise details of where they currently are. Yeah, we've got a pretty decent idea about where they need to be. Essentially, the neighborhoods that we struggle with engagement still haven't changed. And I don't expect that they will soon. It's the neighborhoods that aren't being invested in by the city or the county as heavily. So we've got, when we look at a map, we see the areas that need it. The north side does have a grocery store now, which is great. Unfortunately, it's not quite what people expect for a grocery store. And so I think that they lack engagement. I don't want to speak too much on what they've got going on, because what they have going on is beautiful. But I also know that they struggle to get engagement within the neighborhood. Just until earlier this year, we were running a program called the Wellness Wagon, which was essentially busing folks from the north side to various spots around the Triple Cities area to get them fresh food access. Unfortunately, we are no longer running that for various reasons. One of which, and probably the greatest, is financial. We just didn't have the funding. But we also understand that that's really where a lot of our focus needs to be. And we actually also, to compound it, we've lost a community garden this year in that neighborhood as well. So we have, it's still there, in terrible disrepair at the moment. But on the corner of Shenango and Frederick Street, just behind the Family Dollar, where the proposed VA community center essentially will be. And so we expected construction. We were told construction would begin on that this year, and so we haven't. That garden was not active this year, which leaves us with only one garden in that neighborhood. And we really should have something like 20 in that neighborhood, most likely. So it was a real blow to us and to the neighborhood to lose a garden there. If we lose a garden on the west side, it's sad, but I don't know that it impacts folks like it does whenever we lose one in a neighborhood like that. That really, really needs it so desperately. They don't have a lot of access to fresh food right there. And if they also don't have access to transportation or affordable housing, it compounds the problem even further. So, yeah. But yeah, I think plotting map points would be an awesome community. My brain.
Well, it would be a good community engagement activity.
There we go. That's what I wanted.
University and community members and, yeah. The north, so that north side of Bennington is an area where we.
It is. It doesn't. Up until the Greater Good grocery store opened up, there was no grocery store whatsoever. The closest thing that you could get there was the Family Dollar.
Yeah.
And that's problematic. And we think about this in terms of like fresh food with fruits and vegetables, but really whole grains, the spectrum. We could run the gamut with all the various foods. You know, but grains are actually a bigger issue for most folks than access to fruit and vegetables. And whenever their only option is a box of something that came from who knows where, you know, it's certainly not the greatest option.
Just going to add that the Greater Good will have a mobile bus on operation, a mobile grocery store, into November. And this is also Chow behind this, you know. So I think to Jamie's point, I think they're very interested in sort of assessing and making sure they have community input on what should be on that bus.
Yeah.
Again, this is not a mobile food pantry. This is not like the Greater Good grocery. I mean, employee can use SNAP benefits, et cetera. They're given additional vouchers from the organization, but the key point is to get it out in rural areas, but also in these different neighborhoods. And so the transportation hopefully kind of collapse. Now again, how many spots they can stop? You know, once a week, twice a week, what that looks like is still to be determined, but I think it's definitely important as a community to even question in terms of how the community can help respond to those types of what should be in that bus, what should be the stopping points, you know, what sort of the most impact it can have and where it does stop. So again, look for that coming in November and moving forward too. So again, just looking at all these different models, and you may not have noticed when you came in. I don't know. I know that Health Network, at least her role more so, Kate Clover Miller, with being one of the trustees of the library along with Jen Embry from the University, really helped move. And when you come in, if you look to the checkout desk to the right, it's part of the farm, the library. So right now, I saw people as they came in. You can go there, open the refrigerated unit, and you can get whatever's there for the day, the vegetables, food-wise. So again, just trying to find those points of entry of access to folks where possible. So have a look at that on your way out, just to see another model that's out there that can be clearly replicated. And we're seeing other things happening throughout the community. There are sort of giving boxes and things like that popping up throughout the community. So and we've got an incredible food security network of folks in the area. But I think part of this comes back to kind of, if we step back a little bit from that, a lot of great points you brought up, Jamie, I think is what's the nature of the types of foods of those leading to, you know, basically healthy lives in the long run. For example, I mean, that's always a challenge also too. But it's also thinking about these bigger questions about more resilient food system with these changes. And that's why I think Vines, you know, has a great model in terms of bringing these activities and things into the neighborhoods. And I guess I said this the other night at this film screening we had about kind of resilient food systems, is that the key thing in any community garden is you're not going to feed the community. That's not the point. Right? It's about education, it's about policy, it's about being an active member and bringing together community members to share resources, share understandings, and to move things forward. So, but that's why I think it's a key area. Anyway, so let's open it up still to other questions and comments people have.
I went down through the list of agencies that the Food Council is associated with. There are food pantries, and churches, schools. And I didn't see food or Bamboo Food Rescue mentioned anywhere. Does anyone know how they fit in with the Food Council, or they should fit in?
They definitely fit with the Food Council. I think it's just having a representative from the organization. I know they're pretty much a part-time group. They do a lot of amazing things. But the capacity of a lot of organizations to send a representative to be part of a council. And so, I mean, they are, I know, you know, there's enough connections with those individuals that it's not like they're not out of the loop, per se. It's not meant to be like, you know, a club only, for example, folks. But we know that for every member that's on there is probably enough. They're in support of the council, but don't have the bandwidth and time in the organization capacity, so to have at least a direct input on that council or be on the list. Because just in the last few months, I know members of groups have come and gone. There's lots of different reasons, but the idea is so we can move forward is whether you're part of the council or not, that doesn't matter. It's to make sure that we do have those insights in developing that, for example, this food access plan, because it really is for the broader county specifically.
Yeah, so I guess they're filling in a small piece of the need, so I know they need over, they give away food on Saturdays, so now they're at the Congregational Church. There's usually a pretty long line of people that come together. And they're tied in with the farmer's market, so if someone goes at the end of the farmer's market, goes over and brings fresh food. But you have to be able to get to the church there, and as Jamie pointed out, necessarily a transportation.
Right, and that's also merged with the community meal site as well. Linked to this organization. And I also would add that from that farmer's market, I mean, there may be perception it's just what the farmers have left over. The farmers are keeping things, particularly to give to the food rescue, that they know they just decide to put to the side. It's not just kind of, well, we didn't get rid of this stuff, we didn't sell it, but they're actually helping support and have other ways too. There's a whole other level. Yeah.
Is there more of a way to use the farmer's market too? Sounds like these are people in the food business that are invested in what the food council is trying to do to a degree. Like if you, I know they accept SNAP, they do that, but maybe there could be something.
And there are, I mean, I'm not going to speak for Cornell Cooperative, but there are other systems of vouchers that supplement, double up, etc. I'm looking at Sean because he's not just speak for Cornell Cooperative, but they have other things that sort of enhance those SNAP acceptance, but other coupons that sort of double up more what individuals can get.
Want to respond to that?
I have a different question.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that there are great programs at Cornell Cooperative that helps to support additional vouchers and things too.
One of the things that's challenging about planning for climate change, which is that's kind of what we're talking about, is how do you plan a food system for climate change, is that it's not as if we can clearly see that there's going to be one set of problems and we can plan for that set of problems. So if you have 2011, you get flooding in urban and rural areas, that's one food insecurity or food system problem that it's going to produce. If you have a year where you have drought and farmers can't irrigate, because most farmers in New York State are not set up for irrigation because there's usually enough precipitation, you have a different set of food system problems. And you could just keep imagining the different kinds of things that might come about because of 2 degrees. So I wonder how a food council or a food policy council or a county government can plan for, I guess, what I would call flexibility in response to such a, in some sense, very unpredictable set of circumstances that might come about as a result of 2 degrees of warming. Because it's not just warming that's going to happen. I guess that's more a question for
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So yeah, I think that I think that for like the food plans that the specific goals that they're setting are like purposefully broad, kind of to provide like some flexibility in terms of how to go about solving some of those challenges because they haven't necessarily come up yet. But I would say too that in a lot of the food plans, their kind of initial assessment is looking at the current issues that are challenging the food system. So like I would say that a majority of the plans are dedicated to like issues that are present now, and then how they're going to kind of tackle those issues and address them in the near future, more so than looking at kind of like unknown, I guess, challenges or consequences. Because I think it's hard
socioeconomic side, although it's clearly linked to this, I think people broadly, when they think about climate change, are food system resiliency. And that's sort of resiliency to me is you build in a number of systems that can react to what is unpredictable when all said and done. I mean, clearly that's sort of how you look at successful resilient food systems is where people are always going to be prepared for the drought, for the flood, for everything that comes in between. I mean, not to give too much detail, but like working with indigenous communities, which I've done my whole career, have incredible backups in resiliency because they are always preparing for drought, for flood, for insects, for pests, for raiders coming to eat their food. And so everything's sort of a backup system, whether it's in storage or whether it's in the context that they just grow a diverse set of plants. And so that biodiversity in itself of crops. So you just don't have one variety. Monoculture, is a big problem, but we find that resilience is built into making sure that you're maintaining, dozens, if not hundreds of varieties of different seeds, for example. Again, that's part of that resiliency of even the plants themselves, all the way to how humans can deal with the stressors that are happening too. But yeah, I mean, I think there's no one easy pathway, but I think if we have the conversations and sort of build it as, I don't want to kind of go into the language of emergency preparedness, but that seems a little bit too much, got to be shocked about that, but I think just sort of building in climate change resilience when all said and done really means that you're looking at all these potential options. But you don't have to, you don't have to have like a modeling mathematical algorithm that tells you what could possibly happen. Yes, that can be good in predicting things, but it's also that you really have to give folks, and you could trail off into food sovereignty, which is really where, when the began food sovereignty, it was about deciding what they could grow, when they grow it, where they grow it, but it was also about having resiliency in their own food systems and not being told what to grow when they grow it. They already had embedded and being sort of forced and truncated into these very specific food systems. That's what they were resisting. In part because they knew they were giving up that flexibility. They were giving up the built-in resilience of centuries and millennia in some cases of their own food systems. And so I think part of that comes back to that could be funded, of course. I mean, those are things that I think different federal agencies are interested in kind of knowing about how communities build resilience at one hand. But at the same time, it's going to be the community members themselves who really have the best knowledge at the most local level of the kinds of things that we could be preparing for. There will be another flood.
Yeah.
That we didn't consider that.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that we need to, the reason why our farm here in town has grown was because of the flood, which is unfortunate that the houses were lost and people can no longer build structures there to house people. Eventually, likely, the flood waters will come to an extent where we may not be able to farm there either. Higher ground, as it were. And so even within the growing side of things, we need to be building in that resiliency now to be prepared for it. If we continue to farm or grow in flood zones, we will be prone to having that destruction.
And I think like education is something like mentioning specific food plans, like educating like a new, or specifically farming, like a new generation of farmers. There's a lot of programs and initiatives with pairing like existing farmers with like high school students that are prospective farmers and having them kind of go to the farm and learn about different techniques and such. So I think too that could be useful.
On that point, I would even say that, the education doesn't need to stop with the folks who are learning to grow. I feel like societally we've kind of come to a place where many of us don't know a lot about where our food comes from. We are very disconnected from it. Not entirely. This is not a blanket statement, obviously, but there's a large percentage of our population, both locally as well as across the U.S., globally as well, that just are completely disconnected from yourself, like, how are you gonna know to change if you're not aware? How we know to prepare?
So, yeah, all the lessons from the pandemic about the food supply system where
Well,
we
right.
just woke up and said, what do you mean there's not like a couple months worth of supply back in that back room? Not anymore.
Right.
A few days, yeah.
And just kind of along those lines, I was looking at the data today, preparing for a talk that I have to give tomorrow, Wednesday, about kind of what are the likely climate risks in this area, and we keep talking about flooding, and it's still actually a low probability event. What's great, what has greater probability is just extreme precipitation events. But because most of our fruits and vegetables, we just look at fruits and vegetables, and I understand what you're saying about grains. I mean, grains make up the bulk of the calories, but fruits and vegetables can be expensive things in the market basket. Those are largely not coming from New York. They're coming from other places. And so when we think about the impact that climate change might have on food security, it's not just thinking about what might happen here, it's what's going to happen in the places that grow our food right now. And that's,
But the thing is, New York actually produces all the food that it possibly needs. It's because of economic forces that those foods are coming in cheaper than other places.
Right.
New York is probably one of the largest agricultural states. We are the top 3 producers of almost every single fruit you can possibly think about outside of exotic fruits. We're the second largest apple producer, we're the third largest pear producer. We produce massive amounts of all sorts of agricultural products. We are a massive agricultural state, a massive dairy state. We actually produce so much that we actually don't sell that much outside of the state because we consume for 22 million people within our state. Like we're the second largest wine producing state, and we almost none of them we use.
so
It's just economic forces where, for some reason, potatoes coming from Argentina are cheaper at ripeness than potatoes that are grown 100 miles north.
but interestingly, when you look at it, I just looked at all those data from my presentation last week. Dairy is the only, of all those things that you mentioned, dairy is the only thing, so New York has 6% of the national population. Dairy is the only thing that we produce greater than 6% of. We're not.
That's surprising because
No,
because literally we are massive, especially like just say apples, dessert apples. That thing. We have massive amounts of it, and we produce massive amounts there. And the market share is such that, like Washington, the Apple Consortium that controls the apples, Washington State, which is growing completely unsustainably in the high desert that is irrigated from the Columbia, has beautiful, perfect apples that taste like cardboard, but they are getting far more marketing and Minnesota compared to New York, but we are still considered the top 2 or 3 for taste in the entire world.
We grow 5%, so apples are the next closest with 5%, but if you look at things like, actually, we don't do too badly with snap peas, actually. Snap peas, we have 11% of snap peas. But carrots, 1.5%. Celery,
Sorry, I didn't mean to
cucumbers,
argue,
lettuce,
but-
onions, tomatoes, all of them less than 1% of the US production.
That's absolutely surprising because so much of most of our factories that are used for canning are up in along Lake Ontario. That's our fruit and vegetable belt. The amount of potatoes and carrots and everything that has gone on muck and everything else that's grown up there, it's actually canned and processed there as well.
Fruits and nuts as a whole, 40%. And we're underproducing still.
That's surprising. I thought especially dairy would even be that high since the subsidies went away. Dairy farmers were killing themselves actually because there was not enough there was so much overproduction and not enough actually selling. That's surprising.
But I mean, to the point of resiliency, we have a capacity that could be enhanced dramatically in the state.
Exactly.
If that time comes, when that time comes.
But then we have a labor problem in the state, and everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah. Not loving that at all. So, yeah. Right, all the level of how food is produced.
Well, the increase in CO2 levels has actually decreased the nutritional value of most of our food as well. Which is the
plants are actually producing pretty much concentrate. They have so much CO2 that it's the first shunt that you can do is make sugar molecules. And so there's a lot of evidence that's showing it was supported by looking at goldenrod specimens. They were showing that the nutritional value is actually in all of our fruits and vegetables. The increase in CO2.
And that shift's moving to certain grain pathways too. So we should be concerned, absolutely. So any other last kind of closing comments? Again, we welcome, everyone's input for the food plan, for example, or just in terms of the broader Big 2 Degrees initiative that's really community-led, and look forward to future events, specifically in the month of November coming up. We're going to focus on health, and there'll be future other events coming into the spring semester as well, so thematically around broader issues. So this was the food month, and I want to make sure that before folks go, if you have an opportunity, Jill, I think I put this up as a placard, but we do have a quick survey around knowledge. It's only 8 questions. It's really as streamlined as possible. If you'd like to go ahead and take that. We can go to carry this around. I'll just put it on the way out, whatever you want to do.
It does take only 1 minute.
It only takes literally a minute to do after. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time and look forward to future conversations in our community.